For early access plus exclusive content, facilitated discussions, live one-on-one Q&As, and more, become a patron at patreon.com/Bruce Poinsett. Welcome to the Blacktastic Adventure. I'm your host, Bruce Poinsett, and on today's episode, I speak with Renee Mitchell. Renee Mitchell, 2019 Spirit of Portland winner, is best described as a creative revolutionist, which includes being a published author, playwright, poet, curriculum designer, multimedia ARTivist, and visionary behind I Am M.O.R.E, which stands for Making Ourselves Resilient Every Day, a heart-focused youth development initiative. Renee is also well known for years as an Oregonian columnist, where she was nominated twice for the prestigious Pulitzer Prize. Motivated by intention and heart, Renee's deepest desire is to help others use their creativity to let go, gather up, and move on in order to find their voice and their place in the world. I'll also tell you that Renee is the first person who suggested I record my essays and start doing what we would now talk about as podcasting. And this was, I want to say, back in about 2011. So it only took me about 10 years to, follow up on the vision there. But I would just say that Renee is an inspiration to a lot of artists like myself who are looking to not just, get better at their craft, but use it in ways that go beyond these little boundaries drawn for us by institutions or, I guess the traditions of society, and instead use this to both serve ourselves, serve our incomes, but then also serve our communities in ways that other people didn't think we could before. So Renee's got a lot of stories, has a lot of wisdom, and I think you'll really enjoy this interview. Check it out. Hi, Renee. Thank you for being on the program today. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, considering, I'm grateful that I haven't had as many problems with the snow and that kind of thing. So, yeah, things are going well. Still trying to maintain joy.
Right. I know a lot of people, for those who are going to be watching this later, we're in the midst of a quote unquote snowpocalypse in the Portland area. So,
yeah,
trees down everywhere, a lot of people without power. So, yeah, thankfully, we were able to link up and not have the technical difficulties. So, cross your fingers. But yeah, it's funny having you on as a guest here, because part of doing sort of this digital media venture for myself, you're actually the first person to kind of put that bug in my ear. I'm not even sure if you remember that. But yeah, when you were working at Humboldt, my mother, Willie Poinsett, was the principal at the time, and you were working with the kids there. And I remember you're talking to me about, Bruce, you should, you're doing the writing, but basically told me the future is going to be in this digital media. You should start recording your essays. Just, fast forward, what, 15, almost 15 years or 10 years. I don't want to date it too much. But yeah, fast forward 10 years and finally picking up. So thank you.
Oh, I'm so proud of you. Oh, yes.
But
thanks for reminding me about that.
Yeah, but to that end, I think you came on to a lot of people's radar for your work, both, as a columnist, specifically at the Oregonian, being nominated for the Pulitzer. Can you just, before we talk about your time at the Oregonian, though, can you just talk about what sparked your interest in writing? What got you, or in creative expression, I should really say?
Oh, well, writing has been my lifesaver. When I was young, that was the only thing I had to really try to figure out how to process the kind of things that I was going through. I was raised in a big family, but always felt very isolated because I was there but not seen. And so writing really helped me think about what I was going through and how to make sense of it. So I even have, my mother had saved some writing from when I was as early as 6 or 7. and I was like writing full stories with quotes and and things, and I loved the books. So I, that was like my mentor was just books, Nancy Drew books, and I remember it was just like that was my friend. Books were my friend. Writing was my friend. Creativity helped me get through some really tough times growing up. So it kind of all started. I had no idea that it would be the basis of a long career, but apparently, the universe knew best, and so everything kind of fell into place because of that. Yeah.
Can you just talk about where you grew up?
Well, Northern California in Santa Rosa, which is about 60 miles north of San Francisco. My mother, father, and my 4 older siblings had all been born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the area where my dad was from. And so he eventually moved them to California, and then I was born in Santa Rosa after they had moved there. And so we were one of very few Black families. My dad was a real activist in the community. He had worked for the post office, but he was doing all of these things to try to bring people together because we lived in a low income area. I remember people coming to the house, knocking on the door, asking for money or food. We always, had that kind of a house where people would come in and try to talk and plan and strategize and, that kind of thing. So he was often in the paper. After my grandmother died, she gave me all the newspaper clips that she had saved about my dad. And so he also developed this park, our first neighborhood park, the Martin Luther King Jr., city park in Santa Rosa. So we eventually moved for maybe a little less than a year to Ohio, and he had gotten a job because he was doing all this activist work, right? So they were giving him a hard time, right? And racist stuff. So he got a job as a teacher because he loves children. I mean, he had 8 kids. He loves children, and so he became like a 6th grade teacher. And he loved to play basketball, particularly with the Black boys, as a mentor. And one of the kids, he was playing basketball, landed on his Achilles heel, and he ended up in a cast and went to the hospital, and they didn't want to serve him. And he had a blood clot that moved from his leg and stopped his heart unexpectedly. So after his funeral, we went back to California, and eventually my mother ended up in Oregon. We stayed a year in Northeast Portland, 19th and Klickitat. And then we moved out to Newburgh because she was going to get married again to a guy with 8 kids. And so we had 8 kids, and that would have been 16 kids. And so she wanted to find a house big enough for all of us. And she ended up moving us out to Newburgh, and then never got married. So we were stuck in this community that really was not welcoming for us. We started seeing advertisements in the local newspaper in Newburgh about Ku Klux Klan meetings, and then there was this community gathering where they were like, we're going to have Black kids in this high school for the first time, and this is freaking us out. And it was just it was just the times. Actually, it hasn't really changed that much, but one thing that moving there taught me is a sense of taking control of my own destiny, because the only thing that I wanted to do was get out of that environment. And my sisters all graduated from high school when they were 16 because they took college courses at PCC to get enough credits. And so that's what I did. And so in the latter part of that attempt, I got hit by a car for the first time when I was 15, and where SEI is now located. Before it became SEI, there was a basketball court. 14-year-old girl stole in a car, didn't know how to drive, ran me over, and so she prevented me from fully meeting my goal. So I graduated about 17 from high school. So that was my beginning of like, how do I create an opportunity to change my life because it felt like I was hitting up all against all these obstacles.
Mhm.
And so then from there, I went to college at a historically Black university, which is exactly what I wanted because I felt like I didn't know who I was. You know,
Right. And
I had grown up in
just to make sure we set the time for this. So you were in Newburgh, like around what year was this?
in the 70s, in the 70s, because I ended up going to college in graduating from college in 1984. So
Uh, And you said you went to an HBCU. What school did you go to?
I went to Florida A&M University.
Wow.
Go Rattlers, right? And it totally changed my life because it was the only time I'd ever had Black teachers. And they were teachers and professors and deans by Dean Ruggles. They looked out for me like I was their kid, because I was away from home. I didn't have any support system, and they made sure that I had housing. And I had switched my major, well, actually a couple times, but once they started understanding in the journalism department that I had some writing skills, because I just happened to take journalism classes because I was interested in it, but they saw that I had some writing skills. So they asked me to switch my major, and then they would give me a completely full ride,
Wow.
which that's all he had to say, because I was like, I don't have any money. So, so that's how I ended up in journalism, is somebody saw something in me that could be fuller, developed fuller. And that changed my life. Being able to be mentored by Black adults who really, I felt, cared for me for the first time in my life. I felt like there were adults who really were looking out for me. That was life changing. And then I also just got saturated with what it meant to be a Black woman, in this society. So it just really was a mind-opening experience. I would be a different person if I didn't go to an HBCU. It really grounded me, and I'm so grateful, and still keep in touch with people from that time. One of my best friends, as a matter of fact, we met each other when we were both like 17,
Mhm.
away from home, and we've been friends ever since. So it was a good experience.
Yeah. So from there, you said you kind of like you were taking journalism classes, and then someone saw something in you, and they invested in you.
Just
So
like I saw potential in you. Yes,
yeah,
sir.
yeah, that's right. Just keep the circle going. Uh,
Absolutely.
so how did you go from there to the Oregonian?
Okay. Well, my, I worked in the industry, the newspaper industry, at a time when at least this is how I envisioned my path, that I would work a place for a couple of years, and then I would go to a different newspaper where I would make more money or have more authority, prestige, and that kind of thing. And that's what I did. So I worked at the local newspaper there in Tallahassee, where FAMU is located, Florida A&M is located. And that was my first job. They actually hired me before I graduated because they didn't want me to go anywhere. They just wanted to seize me. And so I stayed there in Tallahassee working for the newspaper there. And then I went to sight unseen. Like, I went to Seattle. They hired me based on my resume. It was kind of a racist place. My supervisor was like over the top. So my old boss from Tallahassee moved to Orlando, and he recruited me sight unseen. Well, he knew me, but I didn't
Mhm.
have to apply. He recruited me to the paper where he was working at in Orlando. So I ended up working in Orlando for a while. I decided I wanted to go into management, and I had a little bit of experience there, but I felt like they were trying to keep me in this box. They wanted me to stay, as a reporter. They didn't want me to move into management at that point. And so in Tallahassee, they said, come on up and you could become a manager. We already know you. We know your potential. So then I moved back to Tallahassee, where I became a supervisor. Like, I managed reporters. And then from there, I moved to Battle Creek because my mother had asked me to. She had taken this job, this nonprofit. She didn't have any family. She moved there, and I decided, okay, I'm going to uproot my life. Maybe I can find another career. But I applied when I moved there to the newspaper in Battle Creek, Michigan. So this is where Kellogg is based, the cereal company.
Mhm.
And I said, I just want to do part-time because I was trying to figure out maybe something else that I wanted to do. But the paper called me back and said, we don't want you to be a part-time copy editor. We really want you to run our newsroom. So that's what I did. I was the city editor for the whole newsroom in Battle Creek, Michigan, did really great work, and then got the attention of the Oregonian because there was a person who went to FAMU who worked under me when I worked in Tallahassee, and she was now working at the Oregonian. And so she advocated for my name, and they ended up hiring me. And so when I came to the Oregonian, it was initially in management. I was the assistant business editor for the business section of the newspaper. And when I was in Detroit, I was like managing the business section. Like I was like making all these decisions about what stories we were going to run, the pictures, and I had a lot of influence. And then when I moved to the Oregonian, it was this sense of like, oh, let's like try around on a couple of things that was so boring. And eventually I said, okay, I want to get my master's degree. If you want me in business, you want to keep me in business, I want to get my master's degree. So they paid for my master's degree. So
Wow.
so I went to George Fox and got that done. And eventually, when the editor was talking to me, she asked me what my dreams are. I said, well, I want to be a columnist, because when I was in Battle Creek, I decided I'm the editor, I'll do whatever I want. And I wrote columns, and it was like, whoa, this is something I really enjoy. It helps me with the writing and blah, blah, blah. So when I went to the Oregonian, I said, I want to become a columnist. And they were like, take a number. There's a lot of people who want that job. It's very prestigious. And I don't think you're going to be able to be a columnist at my newspaper. And I was like, yeah, okay, we'll see. So a couple years later, they asked me to become a columnist, because basically they didn't want to pay someone the money that they would have to pay them from recruiting them from another place. So they started to, they wanted to build someone in-house.
Mhm.
And so that's how it all began. And I had, even within that, I had to push for exactly what I wanted. People have never really given me anything. I've always had to really, make it happen for myself. And so, I had to keep pushing, because they put me inside. They didn't put me on the cover. Like, most people remember me from the cover of the Metro section, but they had put me inside because they felt like our readers, really wouldn't know how to take you and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And so I was like, basically, either you put me on the cover or I'm leaving, and so they put me on the cover. So,
Mhm.
and so then it became like, that's my job. That's what I do. Yeah, but it was a great experience. I'm grateful for my boss, Therese Bottomley, who just like advocated for me. She looked out for me. She was a great boss. She trusted me. She had my back. And, that was how I was able to write some of the things that I wrote, because it made people uncomfortable, including Black people, because
Mhm.
I was like, I'm going to tell the truth regardless. And I upset some people, but I also helped a lot of people too. I think that was my intention.
Yeah, I mean, the truth hurts sometimes, but I
Truth
know,
can hurt sometimes.
right?
Yes.
But just thinking about, because this is the resistance that so many people face going into these spaces, and especially in a place like Oregon, where it feels like there's still so many places where it's like Black pioneers are still happening. But I think about, when you were at the Oregonian, as far as like, obviously I was a lot younger, but when I think about the columnists of who I knew by name, you're at the top of the list. Like, that's who, my
Mm.
parents are saying, oh, you got to check out this, this Renee Mitchell column. You got to see this. Like, and I know I'm not the only one, obviously, as we're out here winning awards, being nominated for Pulitzers, all that. So it's like,
Twice.
yeah, twice, you know,
Yeah.
they got this pushback. I don't know if I love that line of, I don't know if our readers are ready. I don't know if the community is ready. And it's like,
Yeah,
and then of course you do it and it's like, oh, what were we doing? But
right. Yeah. But here's the thing, I'm glad that you mentioned how, you were able to first get it exposed to me, because the reason I had the notion that I wanted to become a columnist is because when I was in college and I did like 4 different internships and one in Chicago, and I met a columnist there for the Chicago Tribune. And that was the first Black columnist that I'd ever been exposed to. And so she became the model for who I could become. And this is why I think it's so important that our young Black children be exposed to various things, because you never know what it might take to inspire them to become what they want to become. And so me getting introduced to her was like, whoa, it kind of opened up my eyes and made me realize this is possible. And so that's why I was grateful for the opportunity to have that visibility, because I wanted other young people to know that writing can take them far. It can open up doors for them. And so even with the writing of the column, it helped me understand I could write plays, I could write songs, I could write poetry, I could write, grants, all kinds of things that I could extend my writing capacity to handle all these things because of the training that I got as a journalist. So, I just feel like people it was important for me to help other young Black children see their possibilities within me. So that
and
was that was made me happy.
that's a great transition because you describe yourself as a creative revolutionist, and you know we started this interview talking about kind of like us connecting when you were working at the schools. I'm curious,
Yeah.
as someone you wanted this, you're striving for this columnist position, you got it, you thrived. What led your transition to saying, okay, I want to go back, I want to work with young people, I want to just pursue all these other creative endeavors, because again, you're in this position where you're
Yeah.
winning. And it's not, as it's not easy work, and it's
Right.
a lot behind the stuff, a lot of not a very unglorified stuff. So what made you
Right.
want to
Right.
do that?
Well, okay, so the timing really kind of opened up other opportunities. So during this time when the newspaper industry was kind of imploding, right? They said, okay, so if we get rid of maybe 50 people, then we'll reach a point where we could start to make money again. And then I just felt like, no, that's not going to be it. It's going to continue. And so, but at the time they had offered 2 years of salary and 2 years of health benefits. It's the most generous, buyout in the country, particularly around newspapers. And I wanted that opportunity because I knew that I had other skills. Because during that time when I had worked as the Oregonian, I had also, been involved in this domestic violence situation, and I was trying to kind of process that, and started the Healing Roots Center, which is the African American drop-in resource center for survivors of African and African American survivors of domestic violence. So I wanted to have the opportunity to see what else was out there for me to accomplish in my life. And so I had written a play and done all this, this campaign around educating people about domestic violence. Because when it was emotional and verbal, spiritual, financial, like it was a very oppressive thing, and it just blew my mind because like nobody talked about this. I had no idea what it was. I had to all figure it out. Seeing an Oprah thing, and I was like, wait a minute, those are my symptoms. Like this is what this is. So I wanted to educate other people, and I had an opportunity to present my play as a one-woman show in Saipan, which is part of the US owned islands, not that far from Japan. And so they had wanted to fly me out later that year. And I wanted to just like say, if I'm going to do this, I don't want to have to go back to a job. I want to figure out, I got 2 years, to figure out what else I could do with my life. And so that's what I did. I said, I want to become this creative person that I know that I am, but I didn't have time to do. So I became, I started writing more plays, and I was acting in plays, and I was teaching artists, and I was trying all these different things. That's when I wrote my children's book. And so I was doing all this creative stuff that was really vibing with me. I mean, it tapped into areas that I hadn't had time to really explore before. And I was really having a lot of fun, and traveling, and spending time with my kids and that kind of thing. So eventually the Roosevelt had recruited me to come and teach, because I love being able to pass along the knowledge. What I had experienced in Portland was that sometimes there's gatekeepers. There's people who feel like they have all the knowledge, and they get really intimidated by people who they feel, you're not from Oregon, you're not from here, and they're gatekeepers, right? And so I wanted to present something completely different. I wanted to just pour in all the knowledge that I could into the young people, so they could just do with it what they will. And so when I got recruited to come to Roosevelt as a journalism teacher through the career technical development lane, that process, because they're bringing in experienced people who haven't gone through the typical teacher training school, but they have the knowledge, what I mean, they have the expertise. And so I came in to teach journalism and recognized, hey, wait a minute, I'm the only Black teacher, because the other teachers had either left or they switched jobs. And so what? So I revived the Black History Month Assembly. I was the person helping restart the Black Student Union. I started with the support of Antoinette Edwards, who was working at, for the city of Portland at the time. She helped me start a Black Girl Magic Club, because I felt like the girls in particular needed something beyond the Black Student Union. And so was doing all this, as well as advocating and mentoring youth, and was loving that, because I loved the interaction with young people, because I wanted to be for them what no one had been for me, right? So I knew I was smart, because even as a kid, I knew how to write, I was making good grades, but I was invisible, right? And so I was invisible at home, I was invisible at school, I was invisible in the community, and I needed someone. I wished I would have had someone who just paid attention to me, right? And just said, hey, you're a smart girl, you're going to be somebody one day, or you're beautiful, so keep your shoulders up, and don't worry about these bullies. I mean, just someone to give me an encouraging word. I never had that till I went to FAMU, right? So I wanted to be for these kids what had not been done for me at that age. And so it came to a point where 3 of my mentees in my Black Girl Magic Club had gotten this scholarship called Beat the Odds. And before then, I didn't even realize some of the things that they had experienced, some of the traumatic things that they had gone through. But when 3 of them at this low-income school, the most diverse high school in the state, had gotten the Stand for Children awards, and there were only 4 of them in Portland, 3 of them were my mentees. That was a big deal, I felt. And I wanted to put like a flag in the ground to just this is important. I want to pay attention to this, because this is unusual. So we came together and we started I Am M.O.R.E. Now, we had no idea what that meant, but maybe let's provide opportunities for these 3 young people to be able to inspire other young people about going through trauma, and yet you can make something of your life, right? So that was generally the idea. So from that point, in late November 2018, we had our first personal storytelling performance at the MLK tribute put on by World Arts Foundation in January. So we've gone from November to January, our very first thing. And so they were nervous. That was the first time. There was 4 of them. The first time they told their story, but I worked with them, because I'm in theater. I can help them, build up their.
For the audience, can you just quickly just back up and describe I Am M.O.R.E?
Okay, so I Am M.O.R.E stands for Making Ourselves Resilient Every Day. And basically it's a youth development, at least that's how it's, it started out as a youth development kind of program. And so I felt like, okay, I know what I can help them do is to tell their stories, right? So that's what we did a couple months later. And then that's when we realized, okay, we're onto something. Let's start doing more youth storytelling in front of adults, because what happened that first time, adults were coming up to these young people in tears, giving them hugs, saying, I'm so grateful you shared your story. I saw myself in your story. You helped me understand my life path. You know, just all of these amazing aspects of feedback. And the youth who had been initially very nervous, and you could hear their voices shaking and the tears, and it started this mind shift of like, oh, I have wisdom, I have things adults can learn from, I have a purpose, you know. And that's when we realized, okay, we're really onto something. Several months later, we were invited to our first national conference in Philadelphia. I mean, the trajectory of what we accomplished. And then we also got our first national award from the Noble Foundation and Family First Foundations, right? Of $25,000. And so it was like, okay, we're on the right track. Let's keep it going. Let's keep it going. And so it unfolded to the point where now we've only been operating a little bit more than 2 years. We've had 2 national awards. We also have an opportunity to create a learning community to really establish culturally specific social emotional learning in partnership with PPS, Kairos, PDX, Open School, you know, and other entities. We're joining together to try to, how do we really respond to what Black students need from the educational system? It's also part of what the topic of my dissertation is about, because I'm getting my doctorate degree from the University of Oregon. And, you know, I have to point out, when I was in high school, teachers were like, you're not college material. Never encouraged me to, you know, think about college. When they do the pre-SAT, never told me about it. Never, you know, it was just, they assumed I was not college material. And here I am getting my, you know, my doctorate degree. So I, you know, want to leverage everything that I'm working with for the benefit of Black students. And so, so that's where we are now. We've gotten all this national attention. We're trying to figure out, okay, so how do we create programming that really reaches, you know, as many Black students as possible? So this summer we're doing this pilot project called See Me, I Am Here, HEAR. And it's sort of like this combination between TED Talk and Oprah's Masterclass with a cohort. And we're training them also in talent management, public speaking, financial literacy, entrepreneurship, grant writing, you know, really preparing them from ages 18 to 25, how to go out and change the world, you know, and how to have that skills, but also to give back, because that's such an important part of I Am M.O.R.E, is that our theory of change is, when I'm grounded in my power, then I empower. Right? So then they want to go back and help other people. So we rise, what we always say is, we rise by lifting others. We want to, once we support others like you're doing, your star is rising because you are supporting other people and helping their star rise. You know, that's how it works for me on a spiritual level, right? And so all of the students that we try to help, we require them to find ways that they're helping others. However they do it, sometimes it's up to them, but just having that intention, you know, that's beyond the each one teach one, like each one teach 30, like start this movement of like what your wisdom, and implanting that into the lives of other people who desperately need to hear what you have to say. So I Am M.O.R.E is like, we have evolved. We had no idea what exactly we would do. But because the opportunity, and because the intention, and because it's so heart-centered, it created this space for young people who were shy, who were voiceless, who were just like not believing in themselves, to really find something within them, because it's an inside-out process, to find something within them that helped them feel like, this is my brand, this is my message, this is how I'm going to impact the world. So I'm loving it.
So, I mean, you know, I've seen a I Am M.O.R.E presentation. It's so powerful. I think, you know, the thing that really this really speaks to me is that, you know, it's a program that's able to do a lot of things at once. Like,
Yes.
it's not just processing, you know, it's a lot of work in general, just processing the trauma you've been through, processing, you know, that ability to find that confidence in yourself. But then it's also, you know, providing these students with actual, you know, these tangible skills, these tangible things in terms of being able to go out and be trauma informed, you know, practitioners for others. It's
Yes.
able to go in
Yes.
and, you know, I thought it was so powerful because you all came to our group, Respond to Racism LO, to
Mhm.
have students of color come in and speak to the
Yeah.
community, come and speak to students in these areas, you know, and again, not just like the Portland metro area, but in these periphery areas, in these other places around Oregon where I don't even need to tell you, it's so powerful
Yeah.
for Black students to be able to interact with other Black students from other parts of the area
Yes.
and see each other,
Yeah.
and see each other in a position of authority and power. Like,
Mhm.
and again, the program's able to do all these things in one, and, you know, also just cultivate an ability to like creatively express yourself. Like, you know, so I just want to, again, you know, give you your flowers for that, because, you know, it's
Oh,
really amazing. So
thank you. And I don't want to overlook the fact that when we have our youth going out and facilitating, like when we went to Philadelphia, not only did they perform, they actually co-facilitated workshops for adult educators. We were the only youth, you know, there at this conference. So we pay youth to facilitate, lead workshops, you know, because we've actually been invited a couple years in a row to train the classified staff for PPS. So every time our youth get in front of a microphone, they are paid because I teach them that they have expertise. Their life experience is their expertise, you know. And if I'm telling you about it, then that means I need to honor your wisdom as an expert. And so that's part of the how do we train them to understand that they're worth it, because we have to go deep into sometimes the money issues that we've grown up with that tell us, you know, don't ask for too much. Who do you think you are? You know, and all of that is embedded in them. And then we have to unearth all that and work on it and say, you are worthy, you know, and I'm going to teach you how to do it until you're able to stand on your own 2 feet. And so when somebody calls you, you say, this is how much you know, my honorarium should be. I will send you a contract. I'll send you my bio. You know, and so they're prepared, you know, to do the work that it took me years to figure out. So they are prepared to be experts and to be paid as experts. So it has a different kind of initiative, you know, from their part when they're doing this, because you know they know that they're leaders. And this is what we always say, you know, I mean, schools say it, other youth development, we our youth are our future. Well, are we training them to be leaders? I mean, you know, are we waiting until they're adults before they can be the future? Like, you know, for me it seems so disingenuous to do it any other way than to train them while they are young and help them work through some of the kinks. And by the time that they become 25, or, you know, they are so ready to not only just like be leaders and facilitators, but to run their own businesses. To me, that's like, yeah, let's do this. That's what I want to invest the rest of my life in doing, is just creating these opportunities for something that's already within them to come out. And we need it in this time, you know.
Mhm.
Folks are like having all these mental health challenges. You know, we're separate from each other. Like, and if we don't do something like really intentionally, this is going to affect this whole pandemic situation, all the racial injustices. It's going to affect 7 generations from now. And like, when will we heal? When will we have an opportunity to move past some of this stuff? And so it has to start now, as far as I'm concerned. And I Am M.O.R.E is doing its part.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I wanted to bring it back. You know, we started this interview talking about kind of like writing is the foundation. And I know
Yeah.
one of the things I found in this being more active in this nonprofit space is just how important that kind of background, that ability as a storyteller is. You know, people think about it, you say, oh, you're a writer. So you write articles or you write columns, but you know, you talked about grant writing or even going into spaces where just talking about the program, like there's so many things happening, but you find that, um, yeah, you find that just the ability to be able to effectively communicate, the skills you learn as a writer, just to be able to tell the story in a way that's compelling and reaches people in a variety of ways. Like I said, it's not just in a grant, it's sometimes in a presentation, sometimes in a speech at a rally. You know, can you just talk about how, yeah, writing is kind of almost, you know, I guess in my interpretation, it feels like this like superpower that powers all these other aspects of making this, you know, making this work successful. But have you had that similar experience, I guess?
Well, yeah, I think writing and communicating in general is a real superpower, right? And sometimes in youth, but in particular, you have to make them feel like they have permission because from my research, in the doctoral program, right? So I've had to, I mean, research is what you do, right? And when you get to that level of education, everything has to be based on evidence-based practices, research, blah, blah, blah. And so what I was finding, a lot of the scholars were saying that schools are a site of Black suffering. They were for me. I suffered tremendously in my K through 12 experience. They still are having the same kind of issues, right? So sometimes it's like giving youth permission to use their voice in all different kinds of ways, and particularly in writing. If you have encountered someone who gave you an F or a C and said that isn't good, what that does is implant something in your mind that says, I'm not good, right? And so words have power, and we teach them words have power when you speak, words have power when you write, words have power when you communicate in whatever way, through writing. And so one of the young ladies who was one of the co-founders of I Am M.O.R.E, I encouraged her to write her application as a poem, which she did, and she won. And and it was like, oh, this is possible. Yeah, it's possible. I'm giving you permission to make it possible. And it turned into getting her the $16,000 scholarship, among other things, right? Because she used it for other scholarships, right? So having those opportunities to point to, the successes to point to and say, yeah, your words matter. And so, it's this is part of this redoctrination of their own possibilities, getting them to turn away from what they heard from their teachers or in school settings to something that we're retraining them by giving them permission to use their words. And so for me, once you unleash that kind of creative opportunity, then you've opened up the door, right? For them to keep it going. And so I've seen evidence of kids who were shy, withdrawn, being able to use their words, their writing, to just become a whole different person. Like it's like, yeah, and it starts with the words that you tell yourself, that are unspoken, the words that you write down, and that's why the social emotional learning thing is so important, but it has to be something more than, what I heard one researcher say, that schools often use social emotional learning as oppression with a hug, right?
Mhm.
So if you're in an environment that's oppressive and all you're adding on is this thing where you I identify your emotions and control your outbursts and whatever, it's this added on thing that basically all you're doing is saying, we're oppressing you, but we're going to give you a hug to make it all better, that kind of thing. And it doesn't work, right? It has to be really embedded within and coming from a heart space, right, of what you're trying to help them, sometimes to make discoveries themselves, but you're creating that opportunity for them to make that discovery. So yeah, it's essential, to what we do. You know, when we had a internship this summer, we were having them do journal writing, express them, get comfortable with expressing themselves and talking about things they hadn't talked about before. This is part of giving them permission to say that their voice matters. And so it's definitely a really strong component of what we do, because we don't give them the words. You know, the words are inside of them, but they have to know that it's okay, and we're going to support you. We got you. And then once you do that, we're going to give you opportunities to share it with other people, and they're going to say, "Oh, you're amazing! Oh, you changed my life! Oh, you have so much wisdom!" And when adults give those messages to kids, not kids, I shouldn't say kids, I don't want to use that word, to young people, to young adults, it affects them, you know, in a different kind of way. Instead of hearing criticism, instead of hearing, you know, be quiet, sit down, wait your turn, you're hearing, speak up, say more, you know, you're changing my life. And so this is an important part of their transition, is to give them opportunities not only to take their writing, to do their writing, but then to give their writing space and airing so other people can then appreciate and honor it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I just love that point, because you know, I'm into my second year of teaching creative nonfiction now, and it's definitely, it's one thing to hit the publish button on your own stuff, but I can definitely attest to when you are able to help students either publish or publish and present their work, and you see them when you're at like a reading, or you see at a presentation, you see, like you said, watching them get this feedback and just get
Yeah.
it validated, like it's a whole other,
Mhm.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing. So
So even when I was at Roosevelt, like I had young people write zines that they then sold at the Literary Arts Annual Book Festival. There was one year they made over $400 just
wow.
selling these zines that they had created. So absolutely it was empowering. And why not? You know, why can't we create that space for them? They were the only youth selling stuff. And so they got attention from that. And then to rake in all that money, it was like, whoa.
Hmm.
But yeah, it feels so good to see the light bulbs come on with these young people. And so every opportunity that both you and I and others have to just allow people to see how powerful they are, how wise they are, you know, how creative they are, is just like, for me, that's the thing. That's the thing that keeps me doing what I'm doing, is the progress that I'm seeing in these kids. Yeah. I'll give it another example. There was one particular young lady who was extremely shy. When I was teaching, she was in my classroom, and I could see something in her, right? But she didn't want to talk because I'd learned about the stressors at home, and you know being the oldest, having to raise her other siblings, some of whom had autism. Her parents were immigrants and worked all the time. So she had all this stress, and she always felt invisible, and that her life purpose was only to serve other people. But I knew that she had talent, she could draw, she had a great spirit, and so she was one of the ones who was selling her stuff, her zines at the literary arts. But then that started building and building and building up her confidence to the point where she had gotten a couple of other young ladies on this social justice action project, where they were able to get free menstrual cycle products in the girls' bathrooms and the non-gender conforming bathrooms. Like, they were supposed to be giving it out, but you have to go to the nurse to get it. Now, if you're having the struggle, you don't want to walk all the way across campus. It's embarrassing, blah, blah, blah. Having them in the bathrooms for free was just, it's just a basic, decent thing to do. So she was able to make that happen. And the principal's like, never thought about it. And that was because she saw something that needed to happen, and it felt this sense of like, I have agency now. I've done these things that make me feel like I can influence adults. And she did, and she changed things for the whole school, at least females, in the
Right.
school. So that's the kind of thing that's like, I didn't tell her to do that. But once you unleash the power in someone, they start to look for, how can I, continue this? That's just one example of what can happen when we just like allow young people to have a sense of their own power, their own
Mhm.
sense of agency.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I think that's what I have as far as questions. But I guess the world wants to know what's next for Renee Mitchell.
Well, it's not what's next, it's what's currently happening that I'm very, very excited about. It's the Spreading the Black Joy Virus campaign. And it's also part of I Am M.O.R.E because it's an intergenerational thing. We're affecting, from kids 0 to 5 to our elders, right? And we have all of these different projects that are intended to really remind people about our ancestral joy, our ancestral ability to make a way out of no way. This comes from way back, like this comes from Africa. Like, so really reminding people about that and a sense of joy, and how joy in particular for Black folks in America is an act of revolution. It's an act of, resiliency and just being able to just tap into joy is essential during this time. And so we're creating different ways to help people right now. We're trying to pass out these beautifully designed Black Joy cards, giving them to people for free, so then they could send them out and just spread Black joy. We started this Black Nod film. We created this Black Nod film, taped hundreds of Black folks doing the nod that we do,
Mhm.
just to say, let's honor each other's dignity. Let's acknowledge this call and response that is like a visual hug, that since we can't like sometimes touch each other, have intimate gatherings and whatever, we can at least acknowledge you and give you this visual hug. So encouraging people to do that brings joy, to people's lives. And then being able to help Paul Knowles, the mayor of Northeast Portland, celebrate his 90th birthday with this huge mosaic of community provided pictures of them with Paul, and that kind of thing. It's like, oh, this is like, life is good, adding all this joy into people's lives makes me joyful. And so that is the thing that we're now in the process of doing. We want this to spread nationally and internationally. So that's what we're working on now. And we also got a Oregon Humanities grant that's helping us develop this other project called See Me, I Am Here. I Am Here, HEAR, which is, I think, it's a combination of TEDx and Oprah's Masterclass, but we're also teaching them public speaking, financial literacy, entrepreneurship, talent
Mhm.
management, grant writing, having this cohort of people who are then also doing facilitating monthly conversations with Black youth around the state. So we're talking to kids about what it means to be biracial, what their life experiences are, what it means to live in a rural community where you're one of very few Black people. Like, how do you find your grounding? What it means to be LGBTQ and a Black youth, and how what your life experiences are. What it means to be African, and how that is a different from African American experience. Being able, giving them space, a safe space to really talk about their lives and their experiences, I think is really helpful to help with their mental health, and also to just allow people to see that they're here, we're here, and give them voice. So those are a couple projects that I'm really excited about. And it's all about like, how can we tap into the potential of young people who now feel invisible, but have so much to offer. And so that's what we're doing with getting them involved in the campaign, Spreading Black Joy campaign, but also this new initiative that we're going to work in cohorts to do the See Me, I Am Here. So we're putting our funding together. We've gotten funding from a couple places. All we got to do is get a little bit more, because we've gotten funding from these national awards that we've gotten. So it's going to happen, and I'm really excited about it. But those two things are building once again on the potential of I Am M.O.R.E to really make a difference in the lives of Black young people.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I look forward to, seeing the growth of these programs, and, seeing, just continuing to watch you know, watch the work you're doing, because like I said,
Oh,
it's
thank you.
inspiring. It helps provide, you know, honestly, you know, it provides a template for people like me to, you know, see what we can do and what, you know, really
Yes.
expand how we use, you know, there are these tools out here, there's these templates, there's these platforms, but I just love how you are, you know, not saying, just refusing like, oh, I don't need to stay within, you know, was it stay within the lines of these little boundaries. No, let's use these to their fullest extent. Let's solve, you know, let's actually solve these problems. Let's get to the heart of these things. Let's do it from a place, you know, a real place of love. Like that
Right.
is
Right.
that is so powerful and so powerful to model. So yeah, I just want to
Thank you.
thank you again for, you know, both talking with me today, but then also just the work you've been doing, the work you continue to do. So yeah, thank you again
Thank you.
for coming on the show today, and you know, best of luck
Yes,
keeping
really
on.
enjoyed spending some time with you. Yeah, I appreciate you creating space to share these messages.